Hey folks, I'm Mr. Hartzler, and I want to talk to you in this video a little bit about completing the square and how to get something into Vertex Form. I would typically call a formula like this standard, and going into Vertex Form just makes things nicer. It's easier to use, easier to find the vertex, and faster to find it, and it also makes it more convenient to graph. So I told my students that the goal is to know how to use this form. This is already in Vertex, and once we know what this is, it's easier to get the new stuff looking like the old. So I'm going to get everything into this kind of form where I have A, my H, and my K. Here, I don't have that. I need to get it into that form. So first thing I'm going to do is write it exactly the same way, except I'm going to give myself some strategic openings. So I gave some parentheses to put those in there. I also separated the 71. I only want stuff with x's in my parentheses, and I'm also going to add a box and subtract a box away. That's all I've done. And if you know a little bit about math, you know I haven't changed the formula any. The parentheses, they don't screw anything up. That's associative property. I'm allowed to group up certain things. And if I add a box, whatever goes in it, and then I subtract a box, as long as they're the same thing in both of them, I'm fine, because they'll cancel each other out. If I added 5, and then I subtract 5 away, everything's fine. So now we have to figure out what goes in that box. I like to call it completing the square, and that's why I actually use squares, or close to square over here. So we take our middle term, the term with just an x, so that is 16. We always, no matter what, divide it by 2 and square it. So 16 divided by 2 gets me 8. 8 squared is 64. So 64 is what goes in this box. Now I need to factor the stuff in parentheses. So I have a y equals, well, what multiplies to get me 64 adds to get me 16. That is going to be 8. And I know these are pluses because that's what multiplies to get me the positive 64 and has to give me a positive 16. Now a little shortcut, and this comes in handier when the numbers aren't quite as pretty. In this case, they were very nice. But if they aren't, this 16 divided by 2, that's always going to give me the term that this is going to split up into. So if I got 3/5 or 3 halves when I divided by 2, that's what would go into both of these spots. That's the convenient thing about doing this. I'm building the square to be easy, to make my life easy. So go ahead, make the right number, and then I know exactly what goes in here. All right, let's keep going. We had a plus 71 minus 64. That's a plus, not 6, 7. Can go a little bit further. X plus 8 squared plus 7. Now I'm in vertex form. Awesome. Let's write out what the vertex is. So the vertex is the opposite of whatever is in the parentheses, so it's going to be a negative 8. It's exactly whatever it is on the outside, so it's a positive 7. You don't have to write the plus. I chose to for this. Now let's also write our axis of symmetry, or AOS. Yes, I do my S's weird. My axis of symmetry, if I had a parabola, it's that line down the middle where it's the same on both sides. That comes from our x coordinate, or our h value, so it's going to be x equals negative 8. And it's always that way. If whatever my vertex is, I take the x part of that, set it equal to x, that's my axis of symmetry. And so I can find it easier, I'm going to box these up. Let's do another one similar to that, and we'll keep going from there. We'll go over here to number 2. I'm going to set it up again with my parentheses. Minus 2x, give myself a break, minus 5, and subtract the box away, because I'm going to add the box right here. Now I ask myself, what goes in the box? Well, my middle term is negative 2x, so I have negative 2 divided by 2, and square it. Negative 2 divided by 2 is a negative 1, squared, positive 1. Not too shabby. Now I factor my parentheses. Multiplies to get 1, adds to get a negative 2. That's going to be a negative 1. But again, still holds true. What was my middle term divided by 2? Negative 1. That's how it factored. Hopefully you pick up on that trend. That can save you some time in the future. And then the minus 5 minus 1 more is the negative 6. Doing pretty well. Now let's find our vertex. That's a 1, negative 6 this time. If it's coming out of the parentheses, it's the opposite of that. And our 6 stays the same. Axis of symmetry, x equals that 1. Awesome. Let's make this more complicated. In the words of Emerson, can we have a harder one? Let's do number 4. Not terribly challenging, but it's a little bit more difficult because it's a little different. There's now a number in front of my x squared term. So I'm going to actually factor that out, but only of certain pieces. So I'm actually going to write it like this first. 2x squared plus 36x plus my box. And then I'm going to add 170 and minus my box. All right. You'll notice I've got a number here. I can factor that out because it's in both of these terms. It's in everything potentially in my parentheses. So let's factor that out. 2x squared plus 18x plus box plus 170 minus box. Now I ask you, have I changed this any? That was when I asked like way back with number 1. So I added a box and I subtracted a box away. But this 2 gets distributed to that box, doesn't it? None of you are shaking your heads yes, but yeah, it does. This 2 gets distributed to this box, so that's actually adding 2 boxes. So I have to subtract 2 boxes away. So since 2 is going to this box, I have to subtract 2 boxes away over here. Okay, done that. Now we got to figure out what goes in the box. So I'm now still looking just at my parentheses. What's with my x? It's an 18. I take 18 divided by 2, and then I square it. What is 18 divided by 2? 9. 9 squared, 81. 81, 81. Oh, actually, not here. Not here. Not up there. 81 down here. There we go. Otherwise, I'd have to go off that 36. So 81 and 81. Cool. Y equals 2. Factor my parentheses. I know it's going to be x plus 9 because 18 divided by 2 is 9. And if you double check, 9 times 9 is 81. A 9 plus 9 is 18. Now it's a plus 170 minus 162. Yeah. Let's clean that up a bit. Y equals 2x plus 9 squared plus 8. My vertex is negative 9, 8. Axis of symmetry is x equals negative 9. My amplitude in this one is 2. Very cool. Not too terrible, right? I'm going to do the one just below this. This is number 6. I'm going to do this one just because it scares people. For some reason, it does. Setting it up exactly the same as all the other ones. I really like consistency like that. So I'm going to add a box, and I'm going to subtract a box away. Notice there's just a plus 0 on the end of that. So I have a plus 0 outside my parenthesis, and then minus box. But plus 0, not going to change anything. Now it goes in the box. Middle term divided by 2 squared. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. Square it is 4. This is a nice one to notice. I haven't changed the formula. Plus 4, minus 4. They cancel away. Factor it. Vertex negative 2, negative 4. Axis of symmetry. X equals negative 2. Again, that always comes from my h value. Now let's do another one. This one, slightly different. Still not terrible. We're going to do number 8. But it's just different enough that people just freak out. Don't worry about it, kids. Really. It's not that bad. So, it doesn't look like what I'm used to. It's a good thing in math to kind of get used to things not being exactly what you'd think they are. Make them look more like what you're familiar with. So if I'm more familiar with stuff like this up here, where it's all foiled out already, well, there's nothing stopping you from doing that here. Let's distribute all of this. Let's foil it. A student asked me about that today. That stands for first, outer, inner, and last. So my first thing in both the parentheses, x and x, multiply them, x squared, outer, The outer two things is x and 4, plus 4x. I is inner things, 5 and x. And last in both sets of parentheses, 5 times 4 is 20. I'll write this off to the right. That's x squared plus 9x plus 20. Perfect example. See, this is where stuff ends up being cute in math. I just love that. All right, I'm going to write this one down here now with my boxes. I don't have to multiply anything to my box back here or put anything out in front because there's just one x squared. If there were more, it would have to go in both of these places. Okay. My middle term is 9 divided by 2 and then square. 9 halves squared. All right. Don't freak out. I'm going to leave it as a fraction. Okay. 9 halves is also 4 and a half, but that's harder to square. 9 and a half squared is the same as 9 over 2 times 9 over 2. How do I multiply fractions? By going straight across. 81 over 4. That's way easier than having to get a calculator or multiply 4 and a half by 4 and a half. That's 45 times 45, folks. That's hard. And then you got to move the decimal over 2 places, if you remember doing that. But 9 times 9, that's way easier. So, all right. There. 81 over 4. 81 over 4. 81 over 4. I know you're thinking it's going to be so hard to factor, but it's not. I told you this trick already. It's done. Boom. Right there. 9 halves times 9 halves gets me 81 over 4. 9 halves plus 9 halves gets me 18 halves, which is 9. I told you we're building this box for a particular reason. Makes everything easier. 9 halves is exactly my answer right here. Now I have to add 20 and negative 40 or 81 over 4. But 20 in fourths, I'm going to do that over here too. 20 times 4 over 4 is 80 fourths. I'm allowed to multiply by that 1 right there because that's just a big old fancy 1, right? It's not a good box 1. But that's like multiplying by 1. I'm allowed to multiply by 1. That doesn't change it. It makes it look a little different. So I have plus 80 fourths minus 81 fourths. So my final answer is y equals x plus 9 halves squared minus 1/4. Yep, there it is. And my vertex, negative 9 halves, negative 1/4. Axis of symmetry is x equals negative 9 halves. Oh, I should shade both these, or box both of those. Perfect. Another one bites the dust. Let's actually keep going down, because that one is looking good too. This one looks scary. It's not as bad. You know what? I'm going to go grab a sheet of paper. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So, this one looks scary. This is my number 10. But it's actually not that bad. Again, make this look like what you're familiar with. On all the other ones, the y was by itself. Let's get the y by itself, folks. It's not that complicated. Let's subtract 6x squared. Let's subtract 12x. Let's subtract 13. All to the other side. I'm not going to write all that because that's a lot of stuff. But now I'm left with a y equals negative 6x squared minus 12x minus 13. I'm going to zoom out. I'm writing a whole lot of stuff down here. Boop, 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 boop. Sorry, I just thought it needed sound effects. All right. Now, this one's difficult because there's something in front of my x squared. So, y equals negative 6, x squared plus 2x plus my box minus 13 minus my box. All right. Let's double check some stuff out, make sure we're all okay. These all had negatives in them. Notice, though, I left the 13 alone. We've done that in all of these. I've left the number that doesn't have an x by itself. Everything else I put in parentheses. The 6x squared, I factored out a negative 6. I was just left with x squared. I had negative 12x. Factored out a negative 6. I was left with positive 2x. And then I'm adding my box and subtracting my box. But this negative 6 goes to this box. So this negative 6 also goes in front of this box. Yes, double negatives. Okay, what goes in my box? That is my middle term, which is now 2, divided by 2, squared. That's 1. 1 goes in my box. So y equals negative 6, x squared plus 2x plus 1, minus 13, plus 6. I just simplified this chunk here. Everything else stayed the same. Now I'm going to factor. So that's y equals negative 6x plus 1. I know that because that's what 2 divided by 2 is from over here. That top 2 is my middle term. Bottom one is always a 2. Minus 7. This part here is my amplitude. That is my negative h. That is my k. My vertex is the negative 1, negative 7. Axis, symmetry, x equals negative 1. Again, it's because that's what my h value is. Oh, you know what? I'm going to point this out because y'all going to freak out when you see it. Look at this bottom one. Look at this number 14. See that? Do you? If you're looking at it, subtract 6. Does that look familiar? It should. It's done. Vertex, negative 3, negative 6. Axis of symmetry, x equals negative 3. Dunzo. Then just walk away. Drop the mic. Back it up. Alright, I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please click that like button down over here and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. I hope all of you have a phenomenal day, and please stay away from drugs.